With staples always making the cores of decks and their effectiveness increase, it makes sense that players come to understand why these cards make up the bulk in most decks. Staples tend to hold the centerpiece to their color identity, representing the best the color can offer. With that, we will start a series for the overview of these types of cards. To start, we will be looking at one of the strongest cards that blue has to offer, that being Cyclonic Rift. Cyclonic Rift is an instant that at 1 in a blue allows us to return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. This is a rather simple effect, but the card also holds an effect at 6 in a blue that reads Overload. You may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change target in the text to each. This card has a lot going for it, especially with its effect flexibility. Typically, Cyclonic Rift will be cast for its overload effect, as it is an instant speed pseudo board wipe. Holding up 7 mana can be a big dissuader for our opponents for the fear of the cast of this card, as it can render whole turns irrelevant to board and game progression, except for the player casting Cyclonic Rift. This is what makes the card so good, but we can also cast it for 2 mana and get a much more minor effect. Though this will not be seen nearly as much as casting it for its overload cost, it will still have its uses. Being able to bounce the right non-land permanent at the right time could really set opponents back, as there may be a certain amount of reliance for specific strategies. Though this card can be played in any blue deck, there are some strategies that want this effect more than others. One of the most notable would have to be control strategies. The effects of this card allow us to keep opponents off their strategies, no matter the circumstances, next to Teferi's protection. Should we find ways of recurring Cyclonic Rift, then we can constantly keep this cycle. With this constant bounce occurring, there will be an opening and opportunity for us to get in the most of our damage, with our opponents not having great onboard protection anymore. Shortly said, this card acts as a fantastic tool for offensive and defensive measures. Cyclonic Rift by itself is a fantastic card, but pairing it with a few other cards can make it all the better. One of these cards would have to be Rhystic Study. Post-effect of Cyclonic Rift, our opponents are forced to redeploy their board, and for every cast of a spell, a trigger of Rhystic Study will occur, drawing us a ton of cards. The same could also be said for Mystic Remora. However, this is for non-creature spells only, limiting our card draw by quite a bit. This card also pairs quite well with counterspells, as we will know what threats our opponents are about to redeploy post Cyclonic Rift. Should we have 1 or 2 in hand, we can potentially lock opponents off of key cards by countering it when they go to redeploy these cards. I wanted to start this series of short form content off strong, and tried coming up with one of the most notable cards in the format. Though a bit on the higher end of price, there really is no other card like Cyclonic Rift that specifically bounces our opponent's boards and won't touch ours. Also, as previously mentioned, Cyclonic Rift can be played and perform quite well in any deck that plays blue. I will likely note this card in some of the commander decks that I talk about in the future, and it's good to have a basis as to why this card is being run. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and might I suggest subscribing to keep up with all the series I have going on. Either way, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.